And the best man, perhaps the second best man, who knows?
Hello, so I'm Nathan, and I am Greg's older brother. And as Greg's older brother, I have known him as long as he's been alive. I don't quite remember him coming home from the hospital, but I vividly remember his first birthday, when our mom made him an elaborate pail of sand cake, which Greg happily threw all over the walls of the dining room at the parsonage next door. And being the older brother, I've done just about everything first, driving, going to college, and even getting married. But now I get to play the role that Greg played so well for Zoe and I at our wedding, and I get to go last. And when Greg told me that he and Marci were getting married, I was thrilled, and I was far from alone. Everyone loves Greg, as the number of people who volunteered to help make today happen shows pretty clearly. And of course they do. Greg's smart, he's witty, he's full of interesting tidbits of information, and he spent enough time antagonizing me as a kid to get most of it out of his system. He is also a truly unusual individual. Just before he started high school, Greg decided to read a set of books called the Harvard Classics. The set was compiled at the turn of the 20th century with the idea that it would be a liberal arts education in 5 feet of books, accessible to anyone. And when our great-grandfather came over from Italy, he learned English in large part by reading these books. And over approximately 5 years, Greg read the whole thing. And as he did so, he began a process that has turned him into a man straight out of the 19th century at the absolute latest. 17th century is perhaps more spot on. He is a millennial in the wrong millennium. You could drop Greg off in medieval Europe, and between his Latin, ancient Greek, and Old English, he'd probably be fine. He'd just set about writing treatises and getting his hands on enough chickens to provide him with the frightening quantity of eggs that he eats. And that's the thing about Greg. He's always fine. He's now as content to just lay on the deck reading John Donne sermons as he once was to watch cartoons and drink frightening quantities of soda at our grandparents' house. He just ambles along, and things that wouldn't work out for anyone else work out for him. His first choice for college was an alfalfa farm in the California desert. But he was able to settle. This is true. But he was able to settle for going to college in Boston. Some of you got that joke. He responded to a letter in the local paper with an op-ed about how, quote, Bible-thumping, witch-burning Puritans invented public schooling in America. And a week later, he had a job teaching at our local Christian school. It happens in the small things, too. In a game of tag, in this very room, Greg yelled, "Look, a distraction!" so convincingly that the guy who was chasing him not only looked, but took a step in that direction. And Greg just jogged on to safety. And it was just a jog, because Greg speeds up for no man. His relaxed pace is so pronounced that when he was little, our mom was afraid he might be a little bit slow. Which is a nice family joke now that he has degrees from Harvard and Johns Hopkins. But it is also entirely true that Greg is just a slow-moving person. Before he started high school, we were genuinely concerned about his ability to get up before 6 a.m. and make it to the bus on time. Then the high school moved its start time back by an hour. And of course they did, because this is Greg we're talking about. And on top of that, I got my driver's license and drove us to school, which got him an extra half an hour. Nonetheless, my enduring image of my brother as a high school student is of him loping down the stairs later than desired, bleary-eyed and carrying a large thermos of tea in one hand and his socks and shoes in the other. At a leisurely pace, he'd sort of stroll to the car, put the tea on the roof, open the door, sit down, grab the tea, and close the door. And no matter what any of us said or did, Greg never hurried. But I don't have to tell you all that when Greg met Marci, he moved fast. I didn't even know that was possible. and frankly, that told me everything I needed to know. And why wouldn't he? Because in what I can only believe is an act of God, he has found someone who's not only charming and beautiful and shares his values, but who can be his music director and actually knows how to farm. As ever, everything has just fallen into place for Greg. Now, no best man toast would be complete without advice, and rather than look to ancient philosophers at the local barber, I decided to reflect on all the advice that Zoe and I got when we got married. So Greg, let me once again give you the benefit of my experience. First, happy wife, happy life is absolutely true. And although I will not have a happy wife unless I tell you all that Zoe prefers that saying to be happy spouse, happy house. Second, when Zoe and I got married, people seemed eager to tell us that marriage was very hard. Worth it, but very hard. And honestly, I didn't believe it. And after 5 years of marriage, I still don't believe it. I think that the truth is that life is hard, but marriage makes it a lot more fun as long as you marry the right person. Greg and Marci, I am fully confident that you've each found the right person, and it is my hope and prayer that God will bless you with many happy years of marriage.